another episode of Talking Sense. Thanks for tuning in. This whole season is devoted to empowered CMOs. And what is empowered CMOs? It's all about women elevating women, particularly in the marketing industry. And so we featured tons of CMOs, we've featured thought leaders and pioneers, which makes me so excited to have a revenue pioneer on today's show, Dr. Debbie Qaqish. And I want to start there because I kind of want to say your last name 1,000 times over and over again. So tell listeners, what is that?
Qaqish is actually a Bedouin name. My husband is originally from Jordan, and it means the sound that a lion makes when it crunches the head of its prey.
Well, there you go. Maybe that's what we're going to do with
That's what we're going to do. That's exactly right, Latané.
Awesome. Well, what a great way to get us kicked off. So one of the things I love is you're a doctor. So tell us, what are you a doctor of?
Great question. I always said that once my kids were grown and gone, I would further my education. So I got my Doctor's of Business Administration. I graduated in 2019. And it's really interesting because, my whole life and my whole passion is around revenue marketing. And my topic for my research was how the B2B CMO adopts financial accountability, given that we're drowning in technology, right? And but what was so fun about that, Latané, is that when you're in a doctoral program, nobody cares what you think, nobody cares what you experienced. No, nobody cares. I was like nothing. It's just all about the data that you collect and how you interpret that data for your dissertation. So it was a great experience in that it really helped me get out of my own way and just use data to create an informed opinion around something. So it was a wonderful experience. I loved it.
That's sort of how we're going to compete and win today. Right? He who has the best data and the best insights is probably
completely agree
win.
with that. Completely agree.
It's going to be the sound that makes the
That's right.
kill,
That's
right.
That's right. He who has the best data will get the kill. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. And we have a little
we got the hand movement going on too. Yeah.
This interview is off to an awesome start. So another thing I love, so you're a doctor, which phenomenal, such a wow, what a huge accomplishment. And something I think, I look up to. I know lots of listeners and women out there look up to that as well. You also have on your LinkedIn, Revenue Pioneer. Mm-hmm. What is that? What does it mean to be a revenue pioneer?
So again, a great question. So let me get a little bit about my history. So I kind of got into this crazy space by accident. It was 2004, and I was the VP of marketing for this small yet mighty technology company based here in Atlanta. And prior to that, Latané, like you, I had been in sales. I had been a VP of sales, and along the way, I had been a VP of sales and marketing in multiple companies. And this one company, because of the opportunity, I was only the VP of marketing. And one day, my CEO comes into my office. I'd been there about maybe 3 months. And he looks me straight in the eye and he says, "Debbie, what are you going to do about revenue?" Well, I just started laughing and I said, that's when we had doors and offices. And I said, that sign out there says VP of marketing, Rusty, not, VP of sales. He says, "I understand, but given your background, help us. What can you do?" And honestly, Latané, I called a few contacts that I knew in the industry, and I found out about this system called Eloqua, and this was 2004. I bought it, I integrated it with Salesforce, and I just never looked back. So like you, I always had the perspective that marketing was about revenue, especially when you're giving this technology that really enabled marketing to make an impact on revenue because the world was changing. We were becoming more digital. And of course, that's absolutely true today. So fast forward a few years, and when I came to work with Jeff Pedowitz at the Pedowitz Group as a partner, and this was 2007, and we kept thinking, this space is so different. It's not like the old marketing. There's a new name. So I came up with this term called revenue marketing. And back in 2007, 2008, when we used the term revenue marketing, we would have one of two reactions. Either the person would look at us like we have just lost our mind, we've just grown a second head, or we were speaking Sanskrit, what the heck are you talking about? Or they'd say, that is really interesting. Tell me more. So I coined the term in 2009, 2010, and then we just ran with it ever since then because, like you, we have the perspective that marketing in a digital age is part of the revenue team. And so revenue marketing is just what I've always been about. Published my first book in 2013 called Rise of the Revenue Marketer. It's still pretty much a primer for any marketing organization that wants to transform from being a cost center to a revenue center. So I've just always been about revenue marketing.
So I would say a lot of people either aspire to be about revenue marketing or think they're about revenue marketing. And I hope a lot are also achieving it. You're out there talking to companies every day. How far have we come being revenue marketers?
We're not doing a good job, Latané. We're not doing a good job. So let me tell you another story. It took me 3-4 years from the time I wrote my concept paper for my dissertation until it actually got published and I graduated. And my main problem that I was trying to solve was there was a gap. There was a gap between the number of CMOs that were being held responsible for revenue and those that were actually reporting revenue. Again, even though we were drowning in all of this enabling technology. And I was so scared during those 3 years that gap would close. Only about a third of CMOs were actually reporting revenue. I was so scared that during those 3 or 4 years that gap would close. It did not. And that gap still remains significantly wide today. I would guesstimate that of the maybe 50% of CMOs that report financial results, maybe only 30% of those have any credibility when it comes to those financial results. It's one thing for marketing to say, we did this. It's another thing for sales to say, yes, you did, or the company to say, yes, you did. And so we are still struggling with that. And again, it's not so much because of the technology. I truly believe, based on the research and the work that I do day in and day out with customers, is that a lot of it has to do with cultural inhibitions, old ways of thinking. It's like when you think, you have a certain way that you think. You have a certain way that the culture informs business. And we can't get out of our own way. It's those companies who are truly innovative thinkers that see the role of marketing as being part of the digital team. It's going to be those companies that win. So it's been a really difficult row and a hard thing for a CMO to get there. And this leads into why I wrote my next book that's coming out in May. It's called From Backroom to Boardroom, Earn Your Seat with Strategic Marketing Operations. Because at the end of the day, the CMO, we were talking about data before, but they've got to use that technology and data to be all that they can be. And you can't do that without a very wonderful marketing operations organization. Long answer to a short question.
No, I love it, and I want to double click on that, but there were like 5 other points that I want to really quickly hang on. So one of the things that I've been talking a lot about with the Empowered CMO Network and the ladies in the Empowered CMO Network have talked a lot about is the market aspect of being a CMO. And what do I mean by that? And I think what you said, well, what do we report on? They don't report on revenue. What we've noticed and what we classify it as reporting on ing. I'm going to report on ing, which are all the things. Yeah. All the things that I'm doing. And I don't know if a CMO necessarily needs to report on, I don't think my board expects me to rock in to our meeting and say, well, this is the forecast for Q1 and this is what I'm calling and well, this is what the AEs are calling. I'm totally cool for Mark that's our head of sales, to report on those things. But I do feel like CMOs need to be the voice of the market. And, here's where the market is going. Here's the TAM that we're looking at. Here's why we're looking at that TAM. Here's how well penetrated that TAM is. Here's our ICP. Here's how the dynamics of our win rates are looking. And here's what I'm doing to shape that market, which ultimately will materialize in a better revenue operating model, which is, win rates, deal sizes, cycle times, and hopefully predictable pipeline. But that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. And then in the middle, I guess I personally have found that I think brand is way underrepresented. I think unfortunately it has like this smelly name, like, ooh, brand, it's fluffy. But to me, if you want to have better velocity, if you want to have, better ASPs, you want to have healthy margins, you differentiate with your experience, which is brand. And so, anyway, so that's kind of, I guess I'm going in another direction, but I see the role of the chief market officer as market, experience slash brand, and then revenue, not forecasting, but owning the levers and co-owning those levers and optimizing really the sales velocity formula. Would you agree, disagree based on your
I
research?
think that for some companies that's correct. I think for some companies it's very, very different. Here's what I do think, Latané. I do think the way that revenue gets produced in companies has changed dramatically. It used to be feet on the street. You and I have both worked in sales. Both of us have been sales leaders.
There's that
And
bag.
that's right. And if you wanted to increase revenue, you hired more salespeople, you hired more feet on the street, you had more bag carriers. That is the way that you did it. That is no longer the game. That is no longer the game. We've heard for years that customers are 60, 70% through their journey before they make any connection with a salesperson, right? And the pandemic has certainly pushed even more online behavior. I mean, usage rates for the internet are up over like 70%. And we don't have as much human touch and human interaction as we used to. People are buying and making their decisions online. And it is the marketing department that is having those conversations. So if you think about the entire, buyer's journey from end to end, right? Sales is here, the very end. But all of this conversation, all of this, who we are, what we do, all of this data that you have about the customer, how they're interacting with you, their aptitudes, their behaviors, way back when it was called Digital Body Language. That was a book written by Steve Woods of Eloquat, right? And of course, Sixth Sense gives you, incredible data. But it's marketing that has that data and is using it, and sales is also now using it. So you have to get away from my part of the production line is this, and your part of the production line is this. And what you have to say, and this is where legacy thinking, in my opinion, gets in the way, because we have these silos. Marketing does this, and sales does this. You just got to smash all that. I think that you've got a digital revenue team. You've got a revenue team, right? And if you take a look at that entire customer journey, the way that marketing puts content out there to invite conversations and to invite behaviors, and then how those behaviors become realized, and then you have information that you can use to either tweak that conversation or give that information over to sales or to any customer-facing part of the organization, right? So I think that the data about the customer, specifically around those online behaviors, is one of those things that, we need new names for sales and marketing, in my opinion, right? You have to take a look at the customer at the center. There's a holistic journey. Multiple people are going to be touching that. And of course, your brand is key to that. Understanding the market is key to that. But also, I think marketing has the keys to the city for the future, because they have all of these digital footprints and this in this data, this behavior. I'll give you an example. This time a year ago, I was working for a company in Boston, and this is right before we shut everything down for the pandemic. And they were a very successful company in selling their core product. And then they decided to bring new products to market because they needed that for part of their growth strategy. However, they knew nothing about these new personas. Nothing. They knew nothing about these new personas. And so through a series of interviews and through a series of marketing cadences, they were able to develop these personas and find out very quickly, what behaviors were observable, what features, what products, what the hot buttons were. And it was all an experiment that they were able to do because they had the keys to the digital conversation that was happening in the organization, right? So I think that the role of the CMO is so complex these days. It's all of these things.
It's so important though, because, and I love sales, but again, I'm passionate about it. But I will say, when you are carrying that bag in those deals, your point of view is the last deal you were in.
That's right.
Okay? It's just human nature. That's what and in sales, you feel all the feels, right? I just had a horrible meeting. This pitch deck sucks, right? Right. You feel all those feels. And so I think if we as marketers have to zoom out and say, okay, time out. Yes, we lost a deal to that. That doesn't make them our number one competitor now, right? Or just because this persona was involved in this deal, we need to look at all the deals and know that was kind of an anomaly, and that's okay. But still, the core personas are blah, blah, blah. And so it's that zooming out that data allows you to do, because at the end of the day, they want to win, right? And so I always say, data sets us free from debate and delays.
Love that. Yep.
Because it's okay, let's just get
And I think
right
you're absolutely right. I mean, that is the job of marketing. That's why I think marketing has the keys to the digital universe, right? And how it helps shape and how it helps inform revenue. I mean, if you're a salesperson, you always want to have the latest insights that you can get. And it's just not the conversations and the emails that you're having with a prospect. It's all the other parts of that company that are visiting your website or visiting a competitor's website, and what are they doing and what are they interested in, right? And that has always been the promise of revenue marketing, was to better inform sales or any customer-facing part of the organization so that you can make better decisions around the customer. But you're right, the CMO, again, you knew what it's like, Latané. It's like you could have said that the CMO was responsible for brand and market analysis, and we've said that for quite some time. But the degree to which marketing is able to do that now with validity because of the data, and then feed that to the right parts of the organization, has just been heightened, right? So it's not really the same thing as it was even 5 years ago, in my opinion.
Well, and it's also, I just had a little bit of a light bulb go off. Perhaps we're out doing these things, but we're not doing a good enough job connecting it to metrics.
That's exactly
matter,
right.
Right? Like connecting experience to, guess what? We reduced our cycle time by a month.
Exactly.
Because we've got all these calculators, we've got our win rates are way better because the way that we've orchestrated something or whatever.
Exactly right.
So you are all about data, and you're a published author, about to be 2 times published. And I'm so excited because I've been looking forward to this for many months, seeing you at RevTech, seeing the premise of the book unfold.
And Latané's in the book. I interviewed her for the book as well.
Yeah. So, and it's not quite out, so we're giving people a little sneak peek, which is fun. So I guess tell us the process. how did you kind of gather your insights? What was your process and what was your hypothesis? And then we'll get into it.
Well, I have the best job in the world because my job is to take a look at what's going on in the market and talk about it and write about it and infuse it within my organization. So I mean, it's just fun. I just talk to people and see what's going on. And so the premise for the book was a couple of years ago, I was speaking at Martech, and I began my talk by saying something like, a lot of marketing organizations are perceived as button pushers. And you would have thought I had reached into their chest and ripped out their heart when I said that. They were like, yes, we're conceived as, and we could do so much more. I mean, it was just like this, you give a lot of talks, and it was just one of those times where you hit a hot button for sure. And so I had always known that marketing operations, because if you think about everything that a CMO has to do, I mean, you even talked about it. I mean, how many jobs can one human being possibly do, right?
I worry about
I worry about them as well. So having a marketing operations organization led by a very talented marketing operations leader is the thing. It's like the wingman for the CMO or the wingwoman for the CMO. I mean, I've had many CMOs tell me I don't go into any meetings until I've talked to my head of marketing ops, and we're straight. We're like this. It's almost like the CMO's mulligan. They get a second chance to do it right? To work with the data, to create the revenue, to help drive the growth. And so that was the premise of the book: was why are so many CMOs failing at revenue? What's going on with them? What are their challenges? And then what is this role of a strategic marketing operations organization, one that was not run like an IT shop, but one that really was invested in connecting to and helping enable marketing goals, sales goals, and company goals, right? Because, I mean, we live in that kind of world where what most people have like 40, 50 pieces of technology now. So that was the premise of the book, is how do you take a marketing operations organization and turn them from being button pushers into strategic enablers that they feel so strongly that they can be, and in that process, ensuring marketing gets a seat at the table, because that's where it's going to happen. So that was the premise of the book.
So I definitely want to dig in on the findings, but I also feel I can see where maybe this is going, where that's great if you got marketing ops and they're really strategic, and I've been on the record sharing this story where I had my right hand person giving me all these great insights, but then our head of sales had his right hand person giving him all these insights, and the two didn't always jive. Not that the insights were wrong, but like the way you calculate something, if you're calculating a win rate with a different look back period or for a different segment, and so we would really get ourselves sideways and actually embarrass ourselves because we didn't tie out end to end. And so, and maybe that's a change management thing, but I love that it's called revenue.
Yes.
So did you find anything about sales ops and marketing ops?
Great question, and I want to answer it a couple of ways. First of all, I'll say that the best organizations actually combine marketing ops and sales ops. And we're seeing this in smaller, more agile companies because they don't have legacy structures, legacy thinking, all of those things that get in the way. It's very exciting to see companies where they don't even build out marketing ops. They just go straight to rev ops. And it's always some combination of sales and marketing and potentially customer success. So the reason that works better than having marketing ops and sales ops is because they are always unified around a single view of the customer. So the data silos go away. Who owns the customer goes away. Data is now transparent and honest. I'm not giving you my spend and they're not giving you their spend, right? So it's all about that customer. and it's all about the most efficient way to drive revenue. RevOps is never, ever about being efficient only. It is always about a single line of sight to the customer and a better way to create revenue across the customer life cycle. And it's those companies that I find the most exciting. I actually have a 5-stage maturity model for marketing operations that ends in revenue operations, and it's a radical reorganization. But I see you smiling, Latané, because I know you and I have talked about this, and I do think it's the way to go, because that way you have honesty in the data. And here's another thing I found. Of the RevOps organizations, and I probably interviewed 4 different RevOps organizations for the book. I interviewed 24 executives, 24 companies in all. And I find that RevOps frequently reports into the head of revenue, or it reports to the head of operations. They prefer to report to the head of operations. It rarely ever reports into marketing. So those are some of the findings from the book.
So here's my experience, and I've been kind of around the block and a little come full circle. So my last company was much more scaled than when I started at Sixth Sense, and we had a sales operations function and a marketing operations function with multiple people, and then we had finance too, and finance also had operators and number crunchers. And so what was great was we had lots of resources to crunch and look at numbers. What was bad was everybody had their own way to look at things. And the truth, it wasn't, you said spin, it wasn't necessarily a spin thing. It was just, if I'm looking at a win rate, looking at the last year, and you're looking at last quarter, and I'm doing a look back period and you're not, or I'm looking at a competitive win rate, or I'm looking at a win rate for this segment. Like, data gets really,
It does.
I mean, when you look at a report, you need to have, I love it when every single footnote of exactly what it is on there, because I'm easily confused. And so when you have all these people, that one little thing, and then all of a sudden nothing matches, and it's very difficult to come together and see a trend, right? I have a saying, lie to me, but lie to me consistently, because the trend is actually important, even if the metric is maybe not, could be calced 1 degree better or whatever, right? And so what I found was that was our struggle, was even to show up to a meeting and know what we were looking at. And so that caused a lot of embarrassment for all of us. So fast forward, Sixth Sense, smaller. I didn't have budget for marketing ops, so I'm like, you hire and we'll call them RevOps. So it's better to be lucky than good, because it has worked out really, really well.
It's the future. I really believe that it is, because as long as you stay in a siloed structure, you're going to maintain that siloed thinking, and you're not going to have the fluidity and the transparency on the data that you need. And so, again, the very first person I ever interviewed, this was when I had a radio show years ago, I interviewed Brian Vass, who is now head of revenue marketing operations at Paycor. And he talked about the reason they went to a combined function was they thought it was the fastest way to get to revenue. It was the transparency, and everything was centered on the customer, right? And they were that central point of customer data truth. So wherever the customer was in the journey, there was a way to connect. There was an optimal way to connect, and everybody was on the same page. So I do think that's going to be the future, Latané, and I do think that we're still in the wild, wild west days of marketing operations, because people will often ask me, what does a structure look like? It depends, right? It depends, like for example, it would make sense for you to own RevOps because you have a background in sales. It just, it would make sense, right? But a lot of marketers have zero responsibility or experience with sales, and it would just be, foreign to them. So, but I think it's the future. I really do.
And so what's holding us back? I mean, I'm kind of getting back to an original comment you made, which you said it's change, it's the thing. While it makes a ton of sense on paper, the reason everyone's not adopting it is like, norms and history. And so what are you seeing play out? Just everyone wants their little fiefdom, or
Of course, there were power structures. Let's face it, there were power structures and political structures in every company that you can imagine. And companies don't make wholesale change until they are forced, until they are pushed. A lot of companies,
yes.
it's just all about the momentum. I've got a comfortable pace here. Why should I change things? Until something happens that forces it. You either get new leadership who are brought in to, take that company to the next level, or you have something like a pandemic, which has really put this beautiful, beautiful spotlight on the role of marketing and its importance to the company. So, people are people, right? They're just not going to grow and innovate just because they want to grow and innovate. They're creatures of habit and they're creatures of comfort. But I do think that you've heard the maxim, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yes.
And that is absolutely true. So and I will also say this, every time I've ever seen a RevOps organization, the head of marketing was an incredible forward-thinking pioneer on these areas, on revenue marketing, on the role of revenue, on RevOps. So it's not something that kind of happens. And the larger the company, the more you have those structures in place. And I also think a lot of times marketing hasn't proven diddly squat to anybody, right? So you can't just show up and
So how do you go and demand? I want this, I want that. It's like,
yeah,
okay.
exactly. So it's a lot of culture because this, Latané. We're drowning in enabling technology. We're drowning in it, right? So what is getting in the way? And again, it's the way we think about how you run a business.
Okay, I love it. I love it. So let's couple areas I want to go to is, you said culture. Culture is people, and you dedicated a whole chapter in your book, which I think is so smart, to people. What does it take to be a revenue? There's no, you know how it is. Things are changing so fast. It's not like there's an MBA
No,
someone
there
can go
isn't.
get for revenue ops. So is it just a Salesforce admin that kind of grows up into this? Is it a Marketo expert that becomes revenue ops?
Again, a great question. And anybody listening to this podcast knows talent is an issue. As we get more sophisticated and we have to find these purple unicorns. We have to find people who know marketing, who understand sales, who are analytical, who understand what a campaign is, who understands data. And these purple unicorns just don't grow on trees. It was really interesting when I did my interviews for the book. Anytime I wanted to talk about talent and skills, the executives would just go on and on and on and just be so
You can feel the pain oozing from
just the pain. I would just sit there for hours doing therapy with them. It was like the therapist. But it's really hard because they're not teaching this in schools. I teach a class at the College of William and Mary. I teach one MBA class, and I've done it this is my 11th year. And these MBA students know nothing about the world that we live in, Latané. They didn't know about CRM until about 3 or 4 years ago. And they don't, so they don't come prepared. And as a matter of fact,
don't pop out with any
no, they
relevant-
don't. As a matter of fact, a couple of years ago, I brought Dan Brown, who's head of marketing operations for Verint, with me, and he gets to the end of his talk, and one, very inspiring MBA student raised his hand. He says, "Oh my God, marketing operations, it sounds great. How do we get a job?" And Dan looks at everybody and he says, "I wouldn't hire any of you." And you could hear a pin drop. So it's a challenge. And so it's not going to come from there. But, when I interview the executives, there's a couple of ways that they find the talent. They do internal transfers, someone within marketing who has some kind of analytical, talent. They're curious. They like technology, and they're just very curious, and so you can kind of do these internal transfers, right? Of course, you can hire skills. I think and I asked somebody this the other day: is it easier to hire marketing skills with people of a technology curiosity and grow them into marketing operations, or to do the other way around. They said definitely start with the marketing knowledge and experience and then grow them into the tech, unless you've got some people that just have to be deep into the
Well, it's so
technology, right?
complicated. It's just
It
so
is
complicated.
complicated.
Well,
And so I do think that when you think about CMO's challenges for the future, talent is in finding talent, grooming talent, growing talent, keeping talent. You know, the other thing, Latané, nobody trains anybody. You may get a Marketo certification, right? You may get your certifications, but who's training you to do anything else in marketing? They train salespeople all the time on all these other things, but where are the marketing enablement organizations that help marketing and marketing operations learn communication skills, collaboration skills, project management, data analysis, insights? I mean, who you just get people and just kind of hope this stuff happens. So I do think we're going to start seeing more practical. For example, do you know Toby Murdoch he was at Kapost. Do you remember Kapost? And Toby sold Kapost, and he has a new company that he has started. It's called Highway Education. And his goal is to democratize marketing operations careers and make marketing operations training available to everybody, including, you know, groups that typically don't even have access to that kind of thing. It's called Highway Education. It's going to be those kinds of things.
oh, I love that.
I'll,
Love that. We need to
I
get
will.
Sixth Sense needs to get involved with that. That
You
is
know what?
amazing.
I'll do an email introduction. I'm on his committee, and I'm happy to give an introduction. But it's going to be those kinds of things. And just imagine, you know, right now I think there's like I don't know how many modules, how large it is, but it'll be online. You actually get into technology. You actually do things. Everything's, you know, online. So you could be sitting at home with, you know, a spinal disease and be able to do this, or you could be sitting in a halfway house and learn how to do these things, right? And then the key that Toby's doing is the young adults don't pay for it. It's free. The people who hire you pay for your education. So once you're through and you have all this proof and you've done all, and you're ready to be hired. So I think it's just brilliant. I'll do introduction for you guys. You'll love Toby. He's like Mr. Optimistic and happy. He's like, if he was a dog, he'd be a yellow lab. That's Toby.
Well, I love it because, so this is kind of interesting. One of my pet peeves in interviewing people is when they say, oh, well, I just want to be strategic and I want to be more strategic. Because I find those people don't end up working out. The people that work out are the ones that are like, oh, I downloaded this spreadsheet, I nerded out, I made a pivot table, I experimented with this technology. Yes. Like, they get their hands dirty. They do. Like, they get into the weeds.
Completely agree with that.
All, I think, now the way to experience and learn something is tactile. It is. Like, get in there, learn it, experience it. Because like you said,
it's so funny you say that.
That's how we all have to learn and stay up to date.
Jeff and I were just talking about that.
I just want to be strategic. I'm like,
no. You just have to get in and do things and have a constant appetite.
Your book.
Yes.
It's going to be incredible. Where can people get it? When does it come out? Where can people get it?
I believe it's coming out the third week of May. It'll be available through Amazon. And also, I'm happy to give away free copies. So if you drop me a line, Debbie@pedowitzgroup.com, and reference this show that you heard it, I'm happy to give 20 free copies out. So delighted.
Let's do it. And I do want to do a slight plug here for the Pedowitz Group. So Debbie's a partner there. All this rich research, all this thought leadership. It's not just that. Their firm has a maturity model. Their firm can help you adopt technology, can help you train your people. Like if you're listening to this saying, yes, hell yeah, you really need to check out the Pedowitz Group. They're the partner that can get you there, because this is people, process, and technology, and you really need experts to help guide you. So a company to watch for. I want to make a little bit of a transition here. Let's go to talking nonsense.
Let's go. Let's talk some nonsense.
Let's talk nonsense. So usually in talking nonsense, we like talk about a buzzword or something like that that we want to bash. But you shared something with me, Debbie, that isn't really nonsense. It's actually quite important about your own personal life. And I think it would be really valuable for
Oh,
our
I'd be happy
listeners
to
to
share.
open up
I'd be happy to
and
share.
share your
When Latané and I were talking in the pre-interview for this series, I had shared with her that I have suffered from depression for many, many years, to a really, really large degree. And it's had a big impact on my life, especially in the last, I would say, 10 or 15 years. And I think that because of the pandemic, a lot of people are suffering depression, and we are now having a more forthright conversation around mental health. So, in the fall of last year, I began ketamine treatments, and these are infusion, like you go get an IV and a drip, and it has totally changed my life. And I'm, not depressed. I feel like I have my life back, and I know that there are so many people suffering from depression, from anxiety, and things like that. And I know it's hard when you get into that cycle to search for help, but I just would recommend anyone who has had big issues with depression to just check out the Ketamine Institute in Sarasota, Florida. So I just wanted to share that because I think it's time for us to have that dialogue as a country.
I just got goosebumps. Mostly because, if you're sick, people are supportive of you. Oh, well, you broke your leg, so let's get you to a doctor. Let's get you a cast. Let's make sure you go to your physical therapy. Um, and and the reality is this is the same. It has to
Yes.
be managed, and you have to seek solutions. And sometimes one solution doesn't work, and you have to keep
That's right.
trying. And so, I have personal experience with it. I
You
think we
did?
talked before. Sometimes it's just this is your DNA,
Right.
and that's
That's
okay.
okay.
Sometimes it's
Right.
situational, and I've had those talks with people where I say, I know that you're not you don't have like chronic. I know, I see you, but you're going through something
Right.
that you might need some
Yeah.
help. Um, and then if it is more chronic, like guess what? You're gonna have to manage that every
Right.
damn day.
Right. So I think the pandemic has really heightened the awareness of that. And so I'm always happy to share my personal journey with people. I have a wonderful, very supportive family. And I can't imagine somebody suffering through this who doesn't have a supportive family. It just must be hell on earth.
Yeah, so if you're out there, we have shared experiences, like let's
Yeah,
tackle this. And thank you so much for being vulnerable and open. I think, again, starting to talk about the mental illness and like a lot of the D&I conversations that have been coming up, inclusive marketing, like that's the first
it
step.
is.
So I just so appreciate you coming
Well,
on
thank you for
and
letting me
wanting to
share
share.
that.
So I want to talk a little more about you, and like a little bit about something that I'm really big on right now, especially coming off of like International Women's Day and Women's Month, which is the notion of a confidence check. And a confidence check is someone who saw you and invested in you. And the investment doesn't, could be I'm giving you a check. It could be just they gave you a job that maybe you had no business having, and they saw something bigger in you. Um, so any come to mind, like people who just really gave you that confidence check?
I will say that I haven't had a lot of those in my career, and that's sad. It really is sad. But I will say that it was my sixth grade teacher who saw something in me that inspired me so much. To this day, I remember that teacher. She just always told me, "You are special. You have something special in you." And that was a very, very important year in my life, especially for being a girl being raised in the South, right? Because it's truly,
There's a certain way.
yes,
You're pretty, you wear your pearls, you
yes,
say yes,
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 yes. And
sir.
I've never really been on board with any of that. I tell people I do talk with a Southern accent, but yeah, if you think I'm a stereotype, you were so wrong. But I think it was that teacher that made such a huge difference in me. And I will say that to any woman listening to this, find a mentor, right? There are so many wonderful women who are happy to help other young professionals. I love doing that. I do a lot of what I call casual coaching. I love to inspire and work with other young women professionals. I mean, nothing makes me happier. I love sharing those stories and those experiences and hearing what they have to say. My first career, I was a commodities broker at Merrill Lynch. I was the only female broker. I was the only pregnant broker. And would have to be in a bar on Friday night for me to tell you all the stories about being the only female there,
Oh,
right?
we
Yeah, yeah.
need another interview
Yeah,
on that.
so I
That
think that women helping women is incredible. Rather than being competitors, we should be helping one another. So I am all for, women empowering other women, but at the end of the day, it's you. You have to
it's
empower
you.
yourself. I love to watch Grey's Anatomy, and there was this one surgeon, I can't remember her name, but she would always stand in the Superman pose before surgery. And it's absolutely
Right?
true that Superman pose makes you feel better and makes you feel more confident. So do that.
I love that.
Let's just do our Superman
couple
pose,
times a
Latney.
week. Superman
Yes.
pose. Superwoman
Superwoman
pose.
pose. That's right.
Superwoman pose. Ah,
There you go. Chin
love
in
it.
the air.
Love it. Well, last question here, and you kind of can't get off the show without this one. So it's just how we roll. I'm a big believer that you learn more from your mistakes than from your successes, and we're all people just trying to get through. So, biggest F
Ooh,
up.
honey, I got one for you. So, I was with Merrill Lynch as a commodities broker for 10 years. And then I got the really super smart idea that I could run my own brokerage firm. So, me and a friend, we took some accounts and we started our own brokerage firm. We lost more money than dirt, let me tell you.
Yeah, you can lose your.
Oh, it got so bad. Oh my God. It was so bad. It was so bad. It took me like 8 years to recover from that one F up. So don't get ahead of yourself. Don't get too big for your pants. It's good to think big, but think smart. Think smart.
But don't you think? Well, we can get into that more, but I love that you think big. And you recovered.
Yeah,
So hey, look at
that's
you now.
right.
Look at you
That's
now.
right.
Well, Debbie, this was such a good episode. Thank you
Thank
so
you for
much.
having me.
First of all, your book is going to really, I can just feel a shockwave that is going to hit with this book and with how we think about our organizations and revenue marketing and selling and teams coming together, people, process, and technology. So I can't wait. I know that's going to be amazing. You're a gem of a person.
You are too, Latney. It's always a
So
pleasure to spend time with you. And congratulations on your book as well.
yeah. I mean, we're just us. We're getting out there, us
Yes, we
ladies.
are.
Superwoman pose. One more
Superwoman
time.
pose.
One
Here
more
we
time.
go.
So if you take anything away, it's Superwoman pose, and we're find mentors and find people to bring you
That's
up
right.
and revenue marketing, baby. It's the new thing. So thank you, Debbie,
Thank you,
and
Latney.
I'll see you
All right.
soon.
Bye bye.